Now once again, because there are so many riders in this lead group, the impetus is turned off, and once again a rider having a little dig to try and stir it up.
Like Martin Tenbosse, a man we haven't seen a lot of over the last few years, but he's decided now that he's going to get out there and try and toughen up the race. Obviously got the nod from Rolf Sørensen, but straight onto his wheels Stefano Zanini, who's riding a storming race here this afternoon, and never very far away there in third position is André Schmeel. Fourth position going to Johan Museeuw. So although there is no major panic on at the moment, all of these top names are riding very close to the front. I think they've got the feeling that a breakaway is going to form quite soon, so they don't want to be the ones to instigate it, but they want to be the ones to cover it.
Well, they're continuing to try and shape this race without success at the moment. Jesper Skibby, who's trying to get away here.
Strange to see him in this new jersey, the Jack and Jones team, the new Danish national team almost. They're representing Denmark now with a new team, and it looks like there's a little difficulty at the back here, and in fact that could well have been Johan Museeuw going back, but it wasn't. That was Franco Ballerini. So Mappé not having all the luck this afternoon. Ballerini back with the team trying to get a new wheel.
Well, he's had a puncture, and that's sad for Ballerini, the man who is the top boy when it comes to the classics. They've lost a strong man there, but the way they're riding these climbs, he should come back up to this group okay. Looking down from the helicopter, you can see now the leader, and you can see the pack just fanning out behind. This will be Skibby we're looking at down here, I think. The leader might be still a little bit further on. There he is.
So Skibby's got himself caught in no man's land. The lead still of Frédéric Guédon is 59 seconds, and Jesper Skibby is trying to get himself across there. He too realises that this could be an important move, and if you can get 2 or 3 riders at the front, then you will have a chance of outwitting the heads of state. But all the time these little splinter groups are going off the front. Everybody now seeing, I think, feeling that there is a strange tactical manoeuvre going on in the event this afternoon, and they might think that this could be the chance for a surprise victory like that of Jackie Durand just several years ago.
I think you're absolutely right, because when you get a team as dominant as Mappé and a team to watch like that, well, the scenario is ripe for somebody to nip away and steal the show. And Guédon is going to try, and he's going to try as long as he possibly can here, because the chase behind is still not organised at all. That's Martin Tenbosse. And in fact, no, it's Mark Wouters who's got himself up there now. There's Henk Vogels in the white Gan jersey as well. So he's got himself in the selection just now.
Certainly has, and riding for Polti there is Salvato. He's moved on. Cristiano Salvato, he's moved into the group. So in fact that little acceleration there has forced around about 10 riders to move off the front of the main field, but now they're starting to react. You can see that big long line showing that it's very fast in the main field. They don't want anybody to get a chance of clipping off the front, and in fact it looks as if they've managed to pick up Jesper Skibby, because there's another rider from Jack and Jones in this group.
Lars Mikkelsen sitting at the back here was in that early attack, still finding the strength to hang on in there. Mark Wouters is just in front of him from the Rabobank team. Still a lot of workhorses here, but no big names from what we can see as we go now steadily through the line here. No, not Bart Leysen, it's Wilfred Peters, the big strong man of Mappé, who's up there.
In fact, that isn't Jesper Skibby, so Skibby must still be surviving out of the front. The situation, in fact, Race Radio are giving us is Guédon is still leading, and he's 11 seconds ahead of Jesper Skibby. So Skibby has almost got across to the man at the front. The rider from Cofidis here, an Olympic gold medalist, Christophe Capella, riding very well in a situation like this, and the man ready to take up the work at the front, Wilfred Peters.
And the USP is Frankie Andreu, so that's a nice little breakaway, but it hasn't got the men that we would have expected in. Although they're getting on with the job in hand right now, but no Museeuw, no Schmeel, and no Sørensen. And of course no Ballerini, because this has all happened while he's been off the back with a flat tyre.
He certainly has, but this group 2 is not completely organised as they should be. The man doing the great job at the front in no man's land is Jesper Skibby. He's trying to catch the lone leader, Frédéric Guédon.
But this little group is concentrating on also the chase down now. Christophe Capel. But there's still nobody to actually organise this group. There's no natural leader. So this is a very strange counter-attacking group. Here's Jesper, who has pulled off 1 or 2 big results in his life. had a very serious crash once in Tirreno Adriatico as well, which he thankfully has recovered from to race at top level again. Well, here he is, Frédéric Guédon, a surprise of Paris-Roubaix, who is now causing one or two surprises here as well. 40 seconds ahead of Skibby, which means that we must be still about a minute back to that main chase group, and then even further now back to the Museu group.
Well, Guédon looking very comfortable, not looking as if he's panicking at all, not putting himself under any stress. He's still having the sense to eat and to drink and to keep his energy levels topped up. He'll know exactly what's happening behind him, because the gap is around about 1 minute to the main group that's chasing him, so he'll have information coming from his team manager to let him know that there is a man coming up very quickly behind him in the shape of Jesper Skibby. And the man now trying to get across on his own, once again, Cristian Salvato of Team Polti. And it looks again as if the whole race is starting to come back together, because this is, I think, one of the strangest Tour of Flanders I've ever seen, because there's no real hammer going down at the moment. The race keeps splitting up and all the time regrouping.
It's not followed a pattern at all. That's Salvato down there, that sort of advanced party of 4. 2 more riders bridging the gap. But you see, they're just looking at each other once again, which means that the big field will just wheel them back in.
There's Andre Schmeel. He's got across to that group. He must have leapt out of the main field. He's the most attentive rider so far this afternoon. He's looking for the little groups to get clear. He's, I think, trying to surprise some of the big names like Johan Museu, who's got a lot of lieutenants around him, like Ballerini and Zanini and Taffy. So the problem that Schmeel has riding for Lotto is that he's the lone leader. But when it comes down to the difficult parts of races like this, he ends up being isolated and not having anybody to help him out or to lead him across the gaps. But he's obviously read this one very well, because he's slipped into that leading group.
2 Polti riders at front, Celestino and Salvato. But there's the echelon formed again. Top right corner is the way the wind is coming. A lot of freewheeling being done here, but they feel they've got that group under control. Just about 25 miles to go, slightly more now.
Michele Bartoli in 3rd position there, surrounded by riders from Lotto and from Rabobank. But this team, Asics, have put the hammer down. They've decided to bring it all back together. He's obviously thinking back to how he won the Tour of Flanders by attacking over the top of the Mur de Grammont. But this man we're looking at now in the green and red jersey of Lotto, Andre Schmeel, is very attentive. He's looking for a nice little breakaway to go clear before he gets to the Mur de Grammont. But now, once again, the whole race coming back together, apart from, of course, the 2 men out in front.
Well, sooner or later they'll stretch the elastic to the limit. Let's have a look and see where Jesper Skibby is. There he is, we can see him, so too can the chase now on this long straight road. And Jesper, to me, doesn't look to be going quite so well as he was a little bit earlier on.
Well, initially he closed down the gap very quickly indeed, but now he's starting to get into the more difficult part of the course. It's very open and very windy, and here's a chance to look at his performances in the Tour of Flanders over the last few years, and he's had some very good ones, very close to the win, but never managed to make the top 3.
He certainly has, 6th, 7th and 8th over the years. The Seiko boys trying to fight their way back into the picture. They had 2 men in the original breakaway. It's very unusual to swing the camera around at this stage of the Tour of Flanders and see so many riders still in with a chance, and 1 or 2 are going to be getting quite confident at the moment about this situation, but the explosion, I think, is shortly to come. Ekimov rubbing his left leg, and Bartoli is here. He, for me, is now the big danger in this raceway. There's Ekimov.
Marco Celestino, the rider from Polti, just in front of Ekimov there. So a lot of the big names moving to the front. They're all very attentive. They're all looking for the split, but it is a very big main field. Still, Frédéric Guédon hanging on at the front, and what he will have next on the horizon is the very difficult climb of Berendries, and almost immediately after that, Tenbosse. Those will be the 12th and 13th climbs of the day, a total of 15. It really is a pretty heavy menu when it comes to climbing in the Tour of Flanders. As you said earlier, Phil, they're never very long, these climbs, but I think it's the repetitive nature in the final kilometres of Tour of Flanders that makes them so difficult.
Well, many of the people watching here, of course, they've nipped in their cars and they've zigzagged over the course to catch a second glimpse, and as soon as they've gone by, they'll be heading down to the finish in Meerbecker. 15 seconds now it is to Skibby. So Jesper is suffering, but is slowly closing that gap and might well reach Guédon. And the way the chase is messing about today, if those 2 riders do get together, well, you may have a big surprise on our hands here. Next stop, the Berendries.
Very big group behind there. They're all jockeying for position, waiting. I think I do feel now that what these riders have decided is, because there are so many of the big names, they're going to wait till the Mur de Grammont, because if you're strong, that is the point where you can actually make the difference, going over the top of that climb and then straight down to Tenbosse. An attack coming there from, it looks like, one of the Mappé riders, and I think that is Andrea Taffy who's gone off the front. So Mappé now not very happy by the size of the group, and they've sent one of their men out in front to try and track down Jesper Skibby.
Well, we're looking here at Leon Van Bon. There's the gap between Guédon and Skibby, 15 seconds. And Van Bon has gone off the front of the group, and that means that Taffy is the lone rider trying to chase him down. Well, Van Bon, very unhappy with just a bronze medal in the World Road Race Championships last year. But my goodness me, I think it was a very good performance by him. Jan Ross has discovered him in the Tour de l'Avenir a few years ago, and he's stayed with Jan ever since, and now he's beginning to really flower as a top bike rider. Well, there's the arrival of big Andrea Taffy, and two very good riders now, Paul, that could change the shape of this race.
Certainly, Taffy has been at the front all of the time for the last 60 or 70 kilometres. He's always been going with the moves. He's done a lot of work, and he's still working now. And I think he's hoping that eventually one of these little groups that he's covering is going to get a nice lead over the rest of the group, because there's a lot of rivalry, I think, in the main field this afternoon, because you've got Sorensen looking at Museo, who's looking at Andre Schmeel, which could give the lesser riders a little chance to sneak off the front.
And Acht de Volgers, if a little lesson in Flemish, means they are the chasers. And it does seem as though Taffy is quite prepared to work here with Van Bon. Very typical Taffy pursuit, puts his head down and drives when he rides with his hands on the tops of the handlebars.
Great start to the season. He's one of the rare Italians that doesn't mind going to strange places to start off his season. The Tour of Langkawi this year gave him his first win as a professional in a time trial when he won the prologue there around the island of Langkawi, and he held on to that yellow jersey for an awful long time after that, and he came back, and obviously it's done him a lot of good because he's still in great shape. But the main field picking up behind a little bit of speed as they try to nail those two riders back.
And it looks as though we're reduced to around about 30 riders in this main field now, as they swoop around that right-hand turn. Quite a lot of urgency, though, at the head of this peloton now. Look at that long, thin line. And that's a sign that they're at last getting down to a workmanlike chase here, because they probably don't like the thought of Van Bon, a very good candidate for victory, or Taffy getting up the road. But they didn't seem to be too worried about Jesper Skibby nor Guédon, and they are getting together, but very slowly. As you can see, we're spread across 42 seconds now, the escapers on the road, and a little bit further back to the main field. So we're still just on that 1 minute spread.
It's amazing the performance of Guédon at the front of this race. He went out there very early on at the top of Kortekeer. Jesper Skibby, a lot fresher, went out after him and nailed back that gap very quickly to begin with, but now he just can't close the final few meters, and that 11 seconds must seem interminable to him, because he'll be able to see Frédéric Guédon, the Frenchman, in front of him all the time, and these two riders trying to leap across the gap. But as you said, I don't think they're going to get too much of a chance, because the main field won't let two men like that go clear.
Well, I think it's the Lotto team of Schmil who are actually trying to chase down these escapers and still keep Schmil in with a chance of a late win in this race near the end. These two, it seems to be, unless it's just when the camera goes alongside, most of the work seems to be being done by Taffy. So he's anxious to be free. I thought he was in trouble a couple of climbs back too, when he seemed to be slipping away from that field, because he missed the split and he had to race back across the gap when the field slowed down at the front. But here's the main field. There's the Lotto boys in charge.
Certainly they've sent their man Ludo Dirksen to the front there to try and pull it all back. They're obviously trying to set something up for Andre Schmeel, who's riding like a true captain in third or fourth position there, right on his wheel, Johan Museo. But interesting to note, in fact, that Museo is still taking a back seat, leaving it up all to his lieutenants to try and ride away from the race, but always staying at the front, trying to avoid any mechanical problems, trying to avoid any danger like last year. This is round about the point last year where he had that little fiasco when he rode into Bruno Boscardin sitting at the back of the main group, and it was not his fault at all. The Italian was looking round over his shoulder and rode into Museo's back wheel, and the two riders went down.
Back to Guédon.
It's already on the slopes here of Berendries, which is around 13% at the hardest part, and certainly done a very good ride. He went out front at 217 kilometres, and now we've covered almost 240, and still Jesper Skibby can't nail down the last few metres to the back wheel of the Frenchman.
Well, he's ever so close. He might get some encouragement at this point, because it looks closer than he really is because of the gradient of the climb. Still 11 seconds, in fact. Thumping out the rhythm now as he slowly but surely gets up to Guédon. It might be in Guédon's interest to actually ease back and let Skibby get up there. It seems silly for two guys to waste so much energy separated by a few seconds on the road.
A lot more serious faces in the main field though. Now this is André Schmil right on his wheel. That is Johan Museeuw. They've decided now's the time to put the hammer down, and they're going to, I think, try and split off the front. Referee on the motorbike there having a little bit of difficulty getting himself out of the action. And André Schmil really has got the hammer down, covered all the time here by Johan Museeuw, and there is a slight gap starting to appear there, Phil.
Well, the Berendries is where Schmil has decided to have a go. That's why the Lotto boys brought him to the springboard, but Museeuw obviously smelt a rat and has moved up as well.
Remarkable, the pressure put on by André Schmil there has split 4 or 5 riders off the front of the main field. Still, Frédéric Guédon hanging on at the front there, about to get caught, I would think, very shortly by Jesper Skibby. There's Skibby, and it's still down to just a few metres, but this is Museeuw. I don't know where these guys have come from.
Museeuw, Schmil has gone across that gap.
Well, that's a remarkable performance, because at the bottom of this climb they were 40 seconds behind. This is Bartoli coming across. Van Petegem is already there, and Manuel Magnin, and one of the riders from Polman, so that could still be Scott Sunderland, and if it is, he's riding the best Tour of Flanders he's ever ridden.
Well, this group now surely is going to do something about it, because these are the top names here. The top Italian has made the gap, Michele Bartoli, Museeuw and Schmil. So this attack by Guédon, which seemed a silly attack at the time, is beginning to shape this Tour of Flanders right now.
It certainly is. In fact, that was Scott Sunderland who just got onto the back of that group there, so the Polman's rider certainly having a great day this afternoon. Van Petegem now for TVM coming to the front, and very shortly the French rider will be able to look over his shoulder, and I think he'll be relieved to see that in fact his own teammate Emmanuel Magnin has made it into that group. So Française des Jeux, after a very quiet start to the season, now putting themselves in a position of force with 2 men in this leading group.
Schmil looks over his shoulder as they pick him up too. Schmil twice third in this classic over the years. He had a 4th and a 6th. He's never won it. Now Guédon looks pretty cool as he gets passed by the group. Magnon, his teammate, is sitting at the tail just to see if he wants to lift back on. But this is a select group now. In front is Scott Sunderland, in front of Magnon, and then we've got Schmil, Museeuw, there's Skibby. And Scott Sunderland really has refound his form here. He came onto the scene a big bang with a 5th place in Milan-San Remo a few years ago, but he's had his peaks and troughs as a pro cyclist. It looks to me as though he might be refining himself this year.
Once again, Phil, that group got away on the climb of Berendries there, and it looked to me as if that was the decision of the race. All the big names were there, but in fact the main field is not very far behind. I would estimate only around about 15 seconds down the main road. They've got a very big group of riders pulling themselves back to the head of affairs again. So amazing that the whole race once again coming back together. That's the group that Museeuw was in, so this is really quite a strange Tour of Flanders.
Certainly very, very different from previous years here. Everybody seems to think they have a real chance of winning this race, and yet we still have the favourites very much at the head of the field: Bartoli, Schmil and Museeuw, and I suppose we should include Van Petegem after his 2nd successive win in Het Vol. There's Schmil, time for a little snack. Van Petegem's the whitish jersey off to the right, dropping back. Magnin looking at the group, and this is the group. Skibby is here.
Johan Museeuw at the front as well. You can see
following wheels, I think, now.
Still hovering off the front of that main group, but it's only 10 seconds. So Museeuw, Van Petegem, Guédon has got in there as well. And Skibby's decided now it's his turn to go out alone.
Well, Skibby's gone because they've caught Museeuw, and he figures they won't want to chase him down. Well, we'll see, because it looks like he's wrong if that's what he does think, because the whole line has reacted here.
Museeuw sitting on the back, I think just trying to ascertain what tactic he should adopt now, because starting to loom on the horizon is the Mur de Grammont. They are about 15 kilometers away from the Muur, which is a very difficult climb, and that is when I think if you're thinking about winning the Tour of Flanders, that's the ideal place to launch an attack. Situated there just around about 10 miles from the finish, it's a very good place to ride alone to victory.
And indeed, it's been the highs and the lows for Museo over the years. Last year was one of his lows when he came over there chasing after having had a puncture. Bit of shouting going on there. I think it's among the riders here as the gaps begin to open. 34 kilometers to go, just over 20 miles to the finish, and Skibby says, well, if you're going to sit behind me, I'm going to freewheel.
None of these riders are very happy. I don't think that anybody's putting in the full effort into the success of this breakaway, because looking back there you could see that main field was right behind them once again. There are too many heads of state and everybody's a little worried at the moment of putting too much energy in, because there's still quite a long way to go before we get to the Muur de Grammont. There you can see Scott Sunderland going through in the Poleman's jersey, followed by Guédon and Johan Museo. But all of the time these riders are a little bit worried about the return of the main field.
Well, I think they should be, because I think in fact that main field is going to come back if they continue like this, because nobody is putting the back behind the move, and I think there are too many big names come up here now. They're not going to carry Bartoli or Schmill or Museo to the finish. If they continue to look at each other, Museo does a fair bit of work at the front and then drops to the back and has a sit out and watches what's going on. And the answer is, just look in the gap where there are far too many motorbikes right now. The main field is coming back yet again. And talk about a tenacious bunch this year. There they are, and the gap is closing down, so it's still very much anybody's ronde this year.
It certainly is. The next town they'll come to is Brakel, and in fact
and who lives there, Paul?
Peter van Petergem lives not too far away, so he'll be the local boy right now. And you see the general regrouping there. Wearing number 4 is Martin den Bakker, former national champion of Holland.
It's nice when you live in the village and you're in the league group, as Peter van Petergem is, at such a close proximity to the finish of this year's Tour of Flanders. He still has very much a real chance of pulling this one off.
To see Frankie Andreu there, still in at the head of affairs, wearing number 152, when the man who finished second last year, Frédéric Moncassin, he's also up there as well, so he's a man that will be dangerous if it comes down to a sprint at the end of the Tour of Flanders, but that itself is quite a rarity.
Yes, but he'll only finish second or third, Paul, because I think in the last season he's had 14 second or third places and he's still waiting for the win. That must be so frustrating.
It's unbelievable, because he's always there in the right place at the right time, but somebody just gets over him when it comes down to the final sprint for the line and beats him by half a centimetre. But surely his day will come, and he has ridden very well in the past in the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, so it could well be that a big group will come to the finish in Meerbeek this afternoon, and that will give the Frenchman a chance to take victory. But once again, as soon as it slows down, 1 or 2 riders nicking off the front.
Well, it would be quite a spectacle, because it's a difficult finish for the sprinters in Meerbeek. You make a right turn and then you sprint steadily uphill to the line. Anyway, there's still riders willing to have a little go here. This is Murray, or was Murray, in the red, and the other rider here is Mengan. There's Frankie Andreu, who seems to be having a great Tour of Flanders this year, and number 23 is Zanini. He, you know, we keep on seeing him popping back. He claws his way back, and he could be the dark horse of the race today, Zanini.
Certainly could be.
Placed in Milan-San Remo as well. He could be searching for an overall lead in the World Cup competition. No sign of Zabel whatsoever now.
Mangin, winner of the Tour de France last year and also the French national cyclocross champion, so he too is finding himself very much at home on these Belgian roads, because there's been an awful lot of cobblestones so far. Good to see Frankie slipping into a move like this, because he's always liked the Belgian Classics, finished 9th in Paris-Roubaix, so certainly we'll be looking for an equal performance in the Tour of Flanders, and US Postal will be looking to get 1 or 2 points for themselves in the team rankings of the World Cup this afternoon, because George Hincapie is up there, as well as Yaroslav Ekimov. And the team standings in the World Cup is counted. You have to have 3 riders to get high placings to try and mark points in that competition.
Zanini here wants a little bit more action from Servais Knaven. He sat up and the line lost its impetus yet again. Just keep an eye out for George, because there's been a split here again, and I don't think George is in it, but he might well be soon, because there's 1 or 2 riders getting across the gap now.
Certainly our reaction again there coming from Rabobank trying to pull themselves up, and that was probably Rolf Sorensen. In fact, it isn't. It's Mark Wouters coming across there. He's looking very good as well this afternoon. He's always been present, but nice to see so many of the Rabobank riders so close to the front in the Tour of Flanders. Maybe they do feel that Rolf Sorensen, the winner of last year, has a chance of getting away again now. Coming into the streets of Brakel, and I'm sure that Peter van Petegem knows every inch of the way.
As he does on all of this course, because he revels in the training roads around here. And a nice big crowd turned out to see the riders through, and prodigal son right in the front group.
Banner across the road there showing the riders that very shortly they'll be going into Tenbosse. 244 kilometers covered, around about 30 kilometers to go to the finish. And this climb not quite as hard as some of the others, 11% at the steepest part, but in fact it's all a good surface. It's not a cobbled climb, and a very tough one as well.
High-speed springboard as we head up towards the famous Muur, which will be the one after Tenbosse, where all the race vehicles even are turned away from that because of the possibility of breaking down on the cobbled climb. There's the Tenbosse slope, 11%, but as Paul said, it's not a cobbled climb, so they should take it more or less in their stride. And that looked like Peter van Petegem going through as well. So it could well be that he's going to let everybody see him now. Now, will they go after him, Paul, or will they let him go? In fact, is it Van Dijk?
Well, that's Hendrik van Dijk, the winner of Kuurne Brussels Kuurne from last year. He's gone out to the front now, so obviously trying to open it up for Peter van Petegem as we get to this very difficult climb. Zanini looking over his shoulder to see what exactly he should do. And I would think the word will come from Johan Museeuw is nail it back, keep it all together. There's Museeuw, looking very comfortable in the middle of the main field, and right on his shoulder, in fact, Rolf Sorensen.
Tough man Museeuw, he's seen it all before, he's not going to be drawn yet. He knows that TVM has sent this man out there to try and draw the sting of people like him, and he's not having any of it just now. Well, having said that, Paul, he's going now, he's decided to really go too. He's let them move clear with Van Dijk, and now Museeuw has gone, and look at the speed of this man. He has ripped away from that field. This is a very serious move indeed.
Very comfortable too. Time to look over his shoulder just to see what sort of damage has happened. He's trying to ascertain, I think, whether there are 3 or 4 men going to come across to him here, because that was an incredible attack. It looked as if he was just moving to the front there to set himself up for something a little bit later on, but once he saw that he had the gap, he put his head down and opened up a great gap over the rest of the field. I'm feel certain now we're very shortly going to see the shape of Andre Schmeel coming across, because these two men watch each other very carefully when it comes to the Tour of Flanders.
Well, Johan Museeuw, he's gone very early if this is what he intended. He's still some 30 kilometres from the finish, around about 20 miles to race. And he has now opened a gap. And the man who is still chasing him down is Peter van Petegem, who might feel a little bit thwarted here by an attack I don't think Van Petegem would have expected.
Certainly not. I don't think anybody expected an attack to come there on Tenbosse, because they would all have expected the climb of the Muur de Grammont to be the decisive part of the course. Now Van Petegem only about 200 metres behind Johan Museeuw, and if these two riders can get together, then the race could very well be over.
Well, Van Petegem, inspired perhaps by the fact he lived in the town we've just passed through, is now finding his day of glory being tarnished somewhat by the attack by the big man of the Tour of Flanders over the years, Johan Museeuw. There's some of his honours he's won. Classic races like the Amstel Gold Race and the Tour of Flanders, of course, and Paris-Roubaix. This is how it all happened, so very, very suddenly. The first big favourite to launch an attack, and my goodness me, he put some power behind those pedals. He catapulted away on the climb, and now he's settling into a lead, but he's gone early enough, Paul, for them all to work it out and chase him down.
Certainly has. There's so many riders in that group behind. This is a risky move, and I think what he will expect is a group of 5 or 6 riders to come across him. He knows that Peter van Petegem is just a little bit further behind, and I'm sure that he will expect a reaction to come from Andre Schmeel. There is the man at the head of the race, Johan Museeuw, obviously not having as much bad luck as he had last year, and the gap back to Peter van Petegem seems in fact to be stretching out a little bit, because before Van Petegem in fact was almost on his slipstream, and now he's been picked up by the group, a very big group chasing Johan Museeuw, and I'm pretty sure we'll see there in fact in second position Andre Schmeel, and he'll certainly try and stir it up.
Well, Schmeel is going to feel a little bit annoyed he missed out on this one, because he marks Museeuw normally very closely indeed. Now the whole field is going to have to regroup and decide how they're going to bring him back. Mirko Celestino is the rider in the lead for Polti.
Franco Ballerini's got back after his earlier puncture as well. The other Italian there riding alongside him, Michele Bartoli, and Henk Vogel's in there too.
Yeah, and it's not surprising, Ballerini looking very content with finding out that Museo has now gone off on his private sortie by himself.
Well, Ballerini riding at the front there. Now his job now is to try and discourage any form of organised chase behind Johan Museo. Museo really has taken the bull by the horns if he's going to try and ride to the finish all on his own at the moment, because there's around about 18 miles left to go to the finish, and in 6 miles he'll be facing the Mur de Grammont, which at 20% is a very difficult climb.
But no stranger to Museo, so he knows what's still to come at him, and he's made a move at just about the right time. Now Sorensen trying to stretch a little breakaway here.
Pierre Domenico, the rider from Brechelat, has gone with him, so they too have tried to leap out of the front here and see if they can surprise the rest of the field. Everybody knows now if they can get to the wheel of Johan Museo, they have a very good chance of staying clear.
Well, Sorensen has got clear, but I'm not too sure whether he can do much about it. Pierre Domenico is not, or maybe he just slipped through on his third to try and help. But again, the line is chasing down these odd men who try to attack. And right now, all the time they're doing this, they're allowing the one man they should have watched very closely indeed, Johan Museo, steal a march over them all.
He certainly caught everyone by surprise with that attack there on Tenbosse, because I don't think anyone would have expected attack to come there, because it's not really one of the difficult climbs, the strategic climbs of the Tour of Flanders. It's a very easy climb normally, but the way that Johan Museo went up there, nobody could match his speed. 35 seconds is advantage over the group, but Phil, it's a very big group and they can get themselves together and organise the chase behind him as we go out of Brakel here onto the main road, which will take him down to Grammont.
We're being treated to a similar situation that we had in Het Volk when Peter van Petegem got clear and the 6 riders left behind didn't organise themselves. He survived to the end. Now Museo, everybody knows him. There is plenty of evidence though that won't happen here, because there are still a number of counter-attacks, and now it looks like Schmill's having a dig.
Well, Schmill's decided now that they've pulled back Sorensen, it's his turn to try and get across there. Everybody knows the man they want to be with, the man they ought to be with, is Johan Museo, who's at the front of the race right now. Schmill has got clear and has got a very good gap over the group, and they may be the one man who could ride across a gap of 35 seconds to Johan Museo.
You certainly can't afford to let Museo get much more than the half-minute he's got already, because once he gets out of sight, that's it. I think he'll settle in nicely, and they'll get discouraged by the fact they don't really see him up the road.
Franco Ballerini saying, I'm not having any of that, thank you very much, and he's going to ride across to André Schmil if he can, just to try and act as the policeman behind his own teammate Johan Museo, who's at the moment leading the race.
Well, Museo had one of those horrible years when he was world champion. Lots of bad luck and a string of punctures in the big races and falls and all sorts. So often happens in your year of reign as world champion. But now with the weight of the World Championships rainbow jersey off your shoulders, it looks as though he's refound himself this year.
Well, everyone criticises his season last year, saying that he didn't have such a great season. Well, he didn't in the one-day classics, but at the end of the season, if you add up his victories, he came away with 11 wins, so that's not too bad for a man who had a bad season.
It's more than some professionals get in their whole career. These are the chasers now, and Ballerini has got across to André Schmil, and to annoy him, he's going to sit there and do nothing to help him chase down Ballerini's team captain.
Ideal situation for Mapei to be in, because if André Schmil can get across to Johan Museo, the first thing that's going to happen is Franco Ballerini, who's just been sitting in the slipstream here, will launch the counter-attack. So for the moment, they've certainly got the Joker in their pack.
That's the advantage of having the multi-million-dollar team.
A certain amount of controversy over whether or not Mapei are going to continue at the moment. Their team, their general manager, Dr. Squincy, has been offered the possibility to sponsor a basketball team or even a Formula One team, and he said that later in the month of April he's going to announce whether or not he will continue to be involved in the sport of cycling. But the way that Mapei are riding, I would think he would be a crazy man to move away from cycling just at the moment, especially as his team is the #1 team in the world.
I quite agree. And looking at this little group, which is getting smaller and smaller here, or bigger and bigger, because in fact Martin Den Bakker has come across from Rabobank.
Servais Knaven, the Dutch rider from TVM, but they've not got very much of an advantage over the rest of the group there, and this seems to be the same scenario we've been going through all day.
Yeah.
Little splinter groups going off the front of the main field and then all coming back together again. Nobody really wants to take the bull by the horns and be the team to be completely dominant. At the moment, the advantage is in the hand of Mappé.
Celestino's brought them back, and we've got immediate counter-attack. Rolf Sorensen's gone again. But Ballerini keeping an eye on everybody now.
Eric Zabel's made it back, Phil, and that is amazing because we haven't spoken about him.
Never seen him at all.
That really is remarkable because Eric Zabel's team in the early part of this event were doing an awful lot of work to keep him up near the front. Then he disappeared for around about 50 miles. Then now, as we come to the critical stage of the Tour of Flanders, Zabel has come back. Now that's quite remarkable.
Well, good for Eric, back in the frame now, and looking to possibly defend his overall lead in the World Cup competition. But this man, former winner of that competition, and he's finished second and he's finished third in seasons gone by, is now dictating the pace of this year's Tour of Flanders.
The Mappé team car there being driven by Patrick Lefevre, jumping across the gap, so the referees obviously feel that the gap is around about the 1 minute mark when they will normally let the team managers go forward. So that will be good news for Johan Museeuw when his team leader comes alongside him to explain just exactly what is happening in the race. And he'll be able to tell him that the team of Mappé are doing a great job behind. They've got Wilfried Peters in there, Franco Ballerini, and those men are closing down all of the little attacks behind Johan Museeuw.
There's no coordination back in that group at all, and I think Museeuw might profit from this. There's first, second and second in this event, and finally in 95 he also got another win. He has had such a brilliant career. Third in 1996.
Strange to see him riding so far away from the finish on his own, but he has won many time trials in the past. In fact, last year he won the time trial of the 3 days of La Panne to give him overall victory in that event, so he does know how to ride alone, but certainly not the normal way we would expect to see Johan Museeuw so far from the finish, because from the top of Tenbosse to the finish line is 33 kilometers. That's over 18 miles, so there's a very brave move, especially when you realize how big the group is behind.
Servais Knaven shouting at our television camera there as he's coming up pretty fast. That's Massimiliano Mori, who was out front and has now quickly been dispatched. Still a lot of racing being done here though. Wilfried Peters. Servais Knaven not finding any help coming from Wilfried either.
They won't find any help from any member of the Mappé squad because they want to put as much of an advantage into the hands of Johan Museeuw as they can. A lot of frustration coming from the other teams because they're doing such a great job. A different approach this year to the Muur de Grammont, straight into the town. Before, in fact, the Tour of Flanders used to go round the town and it was a big loop before you came into the bottom of the Muur. Now you come straight in over the canal and then straight up at the foot of the climb. And in fact, the climb a little bit longer than it has been in previous years, because once they get to the top by the little cafe, they go over the top by the church, making it just about 500 meters further. But that 500 meters, I think, could make all of the difference.
Well, they're now all in a straight line here as we race through the centre of Gerardsbergen, and the only way out as far as this race is concerned is up the wall. And a lot of Belgians will be very happy at this site. Johan Museeuw, very, very popular rider indeed, now approaching climb number 14 of 15. Still a way to go yet. This race far from certain for him, but he is looking so strong, and look at the crowd enjoying the sight of him now. He's pushed that gap out another 10 seconds. It's almost a minute as he starts the climb of the Muur.
He's using a massive gear there as well, out of the saddle on the bottom of the handlebars, pulling with all of his might on that bike to just keep that big gear ticking over. He doesn't look all that comfortable. In fact, he doesn't look like the Johan Museeuw we saw in the early part of the course here. He really is putting everything into this effort, and we go over the small cobblestones before he actually gets up to the very difficult start of the climb.
And he's starting on his big chain wing. He won't be there for long, I don't think, as he now settles in. It's unusual to see Johan ride on the tops of the handlebars. His favourite style is down on the bottoms. Oh, he's really pushing everything he can into those legs now to get. They're still on his big chainring, look, Paul.
That's unbelievable to see the power this man has got this afternoon. He certainly wants to get out and make sure he can get himself a third victory in the Tour of Flanders, because he has won it twice before. But once you turn right up here, you get to the steepest part of the Mur de Grammont, where it's round about 20%, and that's a nice little souvenir there as he throws away his glasses.
Indeed it was. Now the right turn coming up. Now he's reached for the gear lever, has he? Yes, he has. Now he drops to the inside ring as he swings right. Now this climb begins to bite. A little bit of smooth road before the cobbles return. Everybody now warming to the fact it is their hero, former champion of Belgium, former world champion, twice former winner of the Tour of Flanders, Johan Museeuw, now taking the race onto the Mur de Grammont with a lead of approximately 1 minute over the rest.
And when he gets to the top of this climb, 16 kilometres remaining and one penultimate climb before he gets down to the finish at the Bosberg. Now this is where you can lose an awful lot of time on the Mur de Grammont, because in fact Johan Museeuw has been riding on his own for 10 kilometres, and the main field behind will certainly be able to go up this climb a lot faster than him.
Now here he comes on the climb, round to the sweeping right-hander. Hasn't got out of the saddle yet, Johan. He might do in a couple of minutes' time, but then again he seems to be strong today, very strong indeed. He must have had some sense that he was going well to left the race so early on.
Remarkable the way he's come out there 20 kilometres ago. He really has pushed it with all of his might to get here to the top of the Mur de Grammont. Behind there's going to be certainly a major reaction. This is the steepest part of the climb now, 20%, and he's hugging very close into the wall there. This is where in the past we've seen many riders get up and stop, and you can see even the great Museeuw is suffering to get his bike around that corner because it is very steep.
Well, you can feel the power coming straight through your television screens today. This man is immensely strong. He's climbing a 20% gradient, and we'll get some idea how tough it is, I think, with the chasers, because they're not going to climb as smoothly as Museeuw. Here he comes.
This is the new part of the course now, because normally in previous years, in fact, the race has gone straight on, and they've actually taken it right up to the summit of the climb here, just outside Grammont, making it just that little bit longer. Now, here's the main field, led by Schmiel, but close in there, Bartoli as well.
Bartoli riding fourth wheel. Now, let's see what happens here. Peter van Petegem is still here. Zanini is still here. Now, are they going to start rocking and rolling, or is Schmiel going to ride away from him? He's right on the front here.
The move coming by Bartoli there. He's moving up alongside Schmiel. He knows exactly how to attack on this climb. This is where he attacked when he went to win his Tour of Flanders a couple of years ago. So he may well be the man trying to get clear, but you can see everybody behind is just surviving, just struggling to get their bodies up this Mur de Grammont.
So after 5 hours of racing, they've all begun to hit the wall, it seems. What's left of this lead group accelerating out, because it'll be a compact little group that goes over the top, and then they can get down to some serious chasing of Johan Museeuw.
Rolf Sorensen coming through a long way down, alongside him Frankie Andreu, and the two Aussies, O'Grady and Henk Vogel, also suffering. Servais Carnarvon now coming through. There's O'Grady and Frederic Guédon as well, the man who was at the front of this race for an awful long time.
And that's more or less the end of that original big bunch. As we zoom over the top of the Mur, there's still one climb left, the Bosberg. Very often used as the springboard for victory, but today it's going to be the lifeline, I think, of Johan Museeuw. If he survives over the top of that, he should go down to the finish at Meerbeke to win the race for a third time.
Well, that attack by Bartoli on the Mur de Grammont has forced a group of about 5 riders to go clear. Andre Schmiel was straight away looking for some kind of a split over the top, and these riders now just a minute behind Johan Museeuw, who is still riding in a very difficult situation all on his own. Next on the horizon is going to be the Bosberg, and that will leave him just 12 kilometres before he gets to the finish.
And right now it's 15. Left hand turn again, zigzagging away slowly but surely to Meerbeke. And Johan Museeuw, the man who has so often dominated this race, and he's known sadness in it as well, is now once again lining up for a hit at the winning line first time.
Well, once again that group of 5 riders who got clear over the top of the Mur de Grammont, starting to get pulled back by 1 or 2 other riders massing from behind. So it looks like Stefano Zanini had moved into that group and closed down, and also Franco Ballerini is there as well. So all the heads of state starting to move back in and swelling the numbers in that group, and still the US Postal Service represented there with Yaroslav Ekimov, who's having a great day.
Ekimov certainly is. I wasn't sure then whether Bartley actually said something to Schmil as he went down the line. Probably the white flag was going out or something, because they've both got to really chase hard now and forget about who else is in this group if they've got any chance of bringing back Johan.
Man on the back wearing 213 is Gabriele Colombo, the man who just a few years ago surprised the cycling world by taking Milan-San Remo. Right in front of him, the big man Franco Ballerini. The gap in fact started to come down a little bit. It was up as high as 1 minute and 5 seconds, and now it's down to just 54.
Well, they've organised the chase, and the Mape boys are sort of taking the line through as well, but not putting too much pressure in. There's Ekimov, new champion of Russia.
2 men in fact in this breakaway who can speak the same language. They both used to ride together on the Russian national squad.
That's right. In fact, they both won the Russian title, even though André Schmil is now a Belgian national. He picked up the Russian title back in 1991.
Strange to see him later on this year riding the Belgian national championships. And wouldn't that be one for the books if he could be a former Russian champion and in fact be a Belgian champion as well. In fact, a point of interest where his national championships was concerned, in fact, André Schmil was the last winner of the Soviet Union national championships.
Now these riders a little bit perplexed, because the big man Franco Ballerini, who finished 3rd last year, is doing a great job at policing the situation, while Patrick Lefebvre is up alongside his charge here, probably saying just stay steady and you can win this now.
If he got out any further out of that car, he could have been sitting on the bike with Johan Museeuw there as he reaches what is the bottom of the Bosberg. Still a little bit further to go before he gets to the cobblestone section, and that's when you really have to put the pressure on, because let's not forget that Johan Museeuw has been in the saddle for almost 7 hours today, and the weather not quite as good as it was earlier in the stage. The clouds started to come in, and it's not quite as warm as it was either.
But the gap is still more or less the same at 54 seconds. Nobody pulling him back. He knows now he's committed right through to the finish. There's no point in waiting for anybody. Not that I think he's any intention of doing that right now.
Chance to see another former winner of this great event, the Tour of Flanders. Eddy Merckx himself looking very happy to be riding behind Johan Museeuw. So Eddy knows exactly how to win this event. He's won it himself.
And he too always enjoys victories by Museeuw. One thing in common they have, they've both won the Tour of Flanders and they've both been world champion. Now this is the Bosberg.
Museeuw's got it on his small chainring there, but you can just see the power. He realises now that this is the critical part for his breakaway. He's got to make sure that he doesn't lose any time on these cobblestone climbs now, because if he can get over the top with around about a minute's advantage, he's got a great chance of keeping it all the way down to the finish, because from here we shoot right down into Ninove and then across to Meerbeek. But Johan Museeuw is really suffering like I don't think I've ever seen him suffer before in one of these one-day classes, because I think today it's going to be something very special for him.
Well, as he starts the long climb, steady climb. The cobbles are not too rough, they just bounce you around a little bit. He keeps the rhythm going now. A massive crowd here as he heads up towards the summit. First won this race back in 1993 when he beat the Dutchman Frans Maassen. Last time in 1995 when he beat Fabio Baldato. And now the top of the last of the bergs in this year's Tour of Flanders. This is the Bosberg. And well, the boss really is in charge right now. Here's Bartley leading the chase a little bit lower down the same climb.
Certainly is, right in with the action as well. You can see Frankie Andreou there. So Frankie Andreou having a great Tour of Flanders this afternoon, but Michele Bartley is really turning on the speed now, and as always right up in the action is André Schmil. But trying, I think, to demoralise everybody is Franco Ballerini, just riding up alongside them saying, come on boys, is this as good as you can do?
He looks so strong as well to be able to do that. And Ballerini, great consistency in classic races, 3rd in this event last year. This team has so many stars that they can turn them into pawns at the drop of a hat, and now it's Ballerini's turn to try and block for his team leader Museo. But look at the way Bartoli is stepping on the gas up here now. This is Mannion, I think, also trying to now break through on the inside. He's finding his legs too, and Schmill no longer quite looking so sparkly, but he's still got away in what looks like a group of 4 riders clear at the top.
Henk Vogel's at the back here, suffering to try and stay in contention. Last year's winner, Rolf Sorensen, also coming off the back of the line, just showing exactly how fast that group went up the Bosberg. All of that, the impetus being put into the group there by Michele Bartoli from the Asics team.
Now this is when it hurts, when you say to yourself, I won this race last year, and you've dropped some 20 metres off the back of the group, then you've got to dig really deep to rejoin them, and it looks as though Rolf was doing just that. And now we've gone out just a little bit more. The magic minute has been reached. 62 seconds now with all of the climbs behind, and this man now settled into a time trial mode and races towards Miebecker.
Well, around about 7 miles to go to the finish, 12 kilometres from the top of the Bosberg, and Museo now must start to feel a little bit more confident, because despite the fact that that's a very big group behind him and a lot of the major favourites, they're not managing to reduce that advantage. But this man now feels that he can't. Michele Bartoli has gone alone.
Well, Bartoli is the star, I think, of Italian cycling, and the man tipped to have this wonderful future ahead of him. He already has many classic victories, but people still see him as a stage race rider as well, and he's ripped away from them over the top of the Bosberg, and now he's calling them back to give him a hand.
Ballerini wearing number 21, closing it down, coming alongside his compatriot there, just to say, well, sorry guys, but I'm very strong this afternoon, but I can't do anything to help. And Stefano Zanini has moved into that group as well.
That's absolutely right, he's gone through. Magnan, he's had a great ride today. The riders knew his form though. They tipped him as a danger man, as a possible winner, and he's going to finish in what looks like being the chase group now.
Ekimov has noticed the danger as well. He's slipped across there wearing number 156 for US Postal Service. Interesting to see 2 Russian riders in the chasing group behind Johan Museo, although now we do have to admit that André Schmill has been accepted as a Belgian. He certainly had a very long, illustrious career with the Russian amateur team.
Museo sitting on the nose of his saddle, mouth wide open, fly catching as he tries to hold them all off here now. Well, that does appear, Paul, as though that big group behind is now split into 2 distinct bunches. And sadly, Frankie Andreo's in the second bunch, but certainly his team leader, Ekimov, has made the split. That's the way it's going to stay. Just inside 9 kilometres to go.
George Hincapie as well in that group with Frankie Andrea. So US Postal Service got to be pretty happy with their performance this afternoon. They've got their man Yastislav Ekimov in the chasing group of riders behind the lone leader Johan Museo and 2 men behind, so that'll give them good points in the World Cup rankings this afternoon. But Johan Museo, Phil, at the moment is riding a stormer. It's amazing to see this man has gone away almost 33 kilometres from the finish line, and he's still got enough energy to get out of the saddle and keep rolling that big gear.
Totally confident now. His season, he started to show his form in the Volk race, and then soon after that was finished, he delivered 2 great wins here in Belgium on 2 other semi-classic races, Flesch Brabanson and Grand Prix E3 in Harlebeke. And now he's shown us just how good his form is.
Certainly incredible. He looked very slim at the start as well, as if he's lost 1 or 2 pounds. Very cut, those legs of his as well. He came to this event, I think, trying to wipe away from his memory the disappointment of last year, because he would so dearly have loved to win the Tour of Flanders wearing the World Champions rainbow jersey. These are the chasers: Ballerini, Zanini, Van Pietegem, all the names we've been talking about all afternoon, but they haven't managed to go with the right move, and that was the move of Johan Museo over the top of the climb of Tenbosse.
Well, the 7 of them got into that escape group now. Amongst the riders who they've left behind, Fabio Baldato, Henk Vogels and George Hincapie and Frankie Andreo. They're the riders who've been left behind as this second group on the road. Well, they might have had a chance, Paul, but you've got 2 Mappe in there, and if they take this group up to Museo, well, the combinations are enormous for the Mappes now.
unbelievable. They certainly have got the strong hand, but Michele Bartoli's not going to give up. He all of the time keeps moving to the front, trying to accelerate the pace. He's won the Tour of Flanders before and would love dearly to take another victory back to Italy, but it's going to be a very special man that pulls out Johan Museeuw this afternoon, because I've rarely seen him push himself so hard in the closing stages of a one-day event like this. He's got the face on him of a man really possessed.
He's a pretty exciting bike rider, I think, too, and so hopefully we could see something maybe coming out of Bartoli later in the year. But I think the win in this race is beyond his dreams now.
The great thing about Johan Museeuw is you can talk to any rider in the bunch, in the peloton, in the world of international cycling, and they won't have one bad thing to say about Johan Museeuw. They've got so much respect for this man because he certainly is a true champion. He's definitely the champion of the late 80s and early 90s.
Well, he's been so versatile over his career. He can ride stage races and he can ride single-day races with distinction. Yellow jersey wearer, let's never forget, in the Tour de France, green jersey winner.
Although this year he has said that he doesn't want to go to the Tour de France. He wants to concentrate his whole season on winning the World Cup. He wants to make sure that he's good in these one-day events, which he certainly is today, then take a break and then come back after the Tour de France and make sure that he's good for the Championship at Zurich, the new World Cup event in Germany, the Grand Prix of Hamburg, and of course the end-of-season classics like the Tour of Lombardy. And that would be a great one for him to win, because he's never, up until now, been very competitive when he's gone to that end of the season.
There's André Schmil, feeling a little bit the weight of the chase on his shoulders, I think, now, along with Bartoli, and Ekimov also putting his share in too. Peter van Petegem.
He was the last man, I suppose, to see the back wheel of Johan Museeuw over the top of Tenbosse there. He got so close to Museeuw. He was only about 100 meters away when they came over the top of that climb there, but he just couldn't quite close down on the flying man from Gistel.
There's the flying Baldato from Italy, but nobody's helping him now as he drives the line through. Ekimov follows. Schmil jumps across onto Ekimov's wheel. No, he doesn't. Well, they've got themselves a nice little group going here now with Van Petegem. All these riders seem, well, the four of importance are willing to work, but you see the others like Ballerini and Zanini. Zanini's in our picture at the moment. They're not going to help this at all.
They certainly won't. It's not their place to. All they can do here is sit in the back as passengers, as Johan Museeuw, the lone leader, goes under the kite, indicating to him that he has 5 kilometers left to go in this year's Tour of Flanders. Just 3 miles before he can turn into the finishing straight, and what a glorious finish that's going to be, barring any kind of accident that could happen now.
And the crowd just shouting down the ears of Johan Museeuw. For the first time in a couple of years, we're not seeing him in the yellow, red and black as Belgian champion, or the white rainbow rings as world champion, just simply in the multicoloured Mappé leaders jersey, team jersey rather, and now free as a bird in this race.
Magnin seems to be having a few problems there with the front of his thigh, just shaking it a little bit. After a tough event like this, you do find at the start of the season that a little bit of cramp can creep in there, and he has been working very well with the rest of the group, trying to see if they can just limit the advantage that Johan Museeuw has. The last time check we had, in fact, it was coming down just a little bit, 50 seconds at the last information we got from race radio, but still they're not pulling it back quick enough.
A bit of slow motion there to give you some idea of the men who are working and the men who are not.
Certainly a problem here. That was in fact Magnin. He's stretching his thigh there, so obviously he's getting some form of cramp, which is why he pulled his leg up like that, just to try and stretch it a little bit, because this is a man who certainly has an excellent sprint when it comes down to the last few hundred meters. But all the time the other riders in this group are working at the front, and still the Mappé boys, Zanini and Ballerini, happy to sit at the back.
So it looks like the gamble may have paid off here for Museeuw. One has to say, I can't believe it was planned. He seemed to take just the opportunity as it presented itself as he shot off up the climb. And it may well be paying off for him. He never looks around. He knows by the way he's going, he knows the feelings he's getting from his body, that he is absolutely flying today.
And he certainly knows the last few kilometres of this race. He's ridden this race so many times before and so many times to great success. 2 victories. This was going to make it a 3rd unless anything happens between now and the finish line. But I feel the advantage he has over the rest of that group now. He could almost walk to the finish line. His team manager is right behind him there, Patrick Lefevre, giving him all the information he needs, letting him know that if anything does go wrong, he has 2 very strong teammates in that group of 7 riders behind.
Well, they are closing down, but whether they're closing down fast enough, it's hardly debatable. They're pulling back at the moment about 2 seconds a kilometre, and if they keep that rate up, they're not going to bring him back.
They certainly won't. His advantage is still hovering underneath the 1 minute mark, and he's now starting to look over his shoulder just a little bit. Now, this is a psychological moment for many riders. Even though they're getting the time check from their team managers or they're getting a time check from the race radio, they still want to know for themselves. They still want a visual on what's the situation behind.
And it looks as though Peter van Petegem is also concerned about what's happening behind, because the group containing Scott Sunderland and George Hincapie are not very far behind. They're about to, we may be able to see them. They are just in the distance. There they are, so this group could come back together again.
It certainly could. So a lot of panic's going to come into this group of riders now as they go under the banner there, showing them that they have 4 kilometres remaining before they get to the finish, and they will start to panic a little bit, because after all of the work that they have done since they left the Mur de Grammont, they will want to make sure that they don't get caught by the chasing group behind. But I don't think anyone's going to catch Johan Museeuw today, Phil, because he certainly is concentrated and he still looks very strong. There's no signs of weakness.
Well, he's chosen one of the hardest ways to win this race for many, many years, I think, going like this on his own. But there's the big crowd. He's not far away now. Johan Museeuw will not feel safe, but at least surely, oh, it's 59 seconds, so he's just inside the minute now. That should be far enough now as he races to the far end of the town and swings right up towards the finish.
He's just come through the town of Ninove now, heading towards the finish line in Meerbeke, and that red kite telling him just 1 kilometre remains after 276 in the saddle is going to give him just a few more wings, a little bit more energy to push himself towards the finish line. For him, I would think it's going to be one of his sweetest victories in the Tour of Flanders.
Well, Johan Museeuw, a professional since 1988. He'll be 33 years of age this year. And this one's going to be for his family, Veronique and Gianni. And he's going to get the atmosphere, just the usual check over the shoulder, but it's going to be a lovely result for him this time. He's got his name on many of the big ones. Surprisingly, he's only won 2 stages in the Tour de France, both of those coming back in 1990, when he was a challenger in the green jersey competition. But now all that's behind him. He now becomes just one other rider to win this event 3 times in all, and he now follows in the wheel tracks of Achille Brice, Eric Lemont and Fiorenzo Magni, the only other 3 riders to win 3 Rondes, 3 Tours of Flanders. Johan Museeuw gets the victory, and he has really showed today that he was the very best man of what has been a very tough race to judge, and almost 7 hours in the saddle as well.
A lot of nervousness in the group behind now, Phil, because everybody realises they're not going to win the Tour of Flanders, but still an awful lot of points at stake. And Franco Ballerini winding it up on the front, and on his wheel Stefano Zanini, and right behind them Andre Schmil.
Well, this is going to be a very good sprint indeed, but the 2 Mappe boys have had a bit of a ride since they break away by the team captain. Schmil you can reckon on the left. It looks as though Zanini's going to try and make it a 1-2 for Mappe. This is not unprecedented by this team in other big classics, but now Zanini is going to show his sprint. Zanini gets second, and Schmil is going to follow his wheel over the line, and Magna was the rider on the far right who probably will be given 4th place on the day. And just tailed a little bit off the back of the race here, looks like Bortolami, another good result for him. And right on his heels too now come the big pack. And Scott Sunderland it is who takes it out. No, it's Wilfred Peters, just ahead of Scott Sunderland.
Well, Johan Museeuw obviously looking a little bit tired after the finish, Phil, but certainly I would think that has to be one of his sweetest victories in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, because for him, being a Belgian and being from Flanders, this really is an important event.
Well, there's the hugs and the kisses from a team which has been so loyal to him today to give him the victory, and smiles all round. They're all brilliant in their own right anyway, and they've given their team captain the victory. Now all that remains is to join Paul, and let's see what the riders had to say about this.
It was so hard. It was such a hard race that a lot of the good guys, only Musev could make the difference on Berendries, and then we were a few guys on the same level, like me and Bartoli and Van Biedegem with Smil. We tried, and that was the moment really to go after him. Just after there, make a 4- or 5-man group and give everything we had. But it was closed again. He had a very good team from behind, and every time we tried something, yeah, they closed with. Do you have water? A drink, something to drink.
He was really strong today, though. When he went, that was a very powerful attack.
Yeah, he was very strong. He was the strongest, and I saw him riding last weekend. He was really incredibly strong, and there was not much to do also because he went in, he knows himself, and with a strong team like that, he didn't even have to close the gaps or anything. He could ride from the front, and with that team he had today, it was very difficult for the other ones to, or for us others to do something about it.
That was an incredible ride today, Scott, because you were with all the big moves.
Yeah, I just, in the punter on the first day, I had a good day there, and I thought, yeah, I can maybe do something here if it stays dry. And I just couldn't afford to, because I don't have a team, I just couldn't afford not to be in every move, And there's so many good riders here, But I was maybe in one move too many, and just cost me that 10 metres on the top of the Bosberg,
But it really does seem that you've got extra motivation this year. Is that because of the change from Gant to Polmans?
Yeah, it probably is, but I think the main reason is that with Walter Plankard in a smaller team, they let me do as I want, and they got confidence in me. I've been now a pro for so many years and racing on the circuit, and they just let me do it rather than me having to do it their way, and they don't even know me, So Walter Plankard's put confidence in me, and yeah, you see the results, no stress, and I'm just enjoying it, Thanks, mate.
Well, Andre, you rode very well this afternoon, but it was difficult to do anything against the Mapei squad in the final. I think I rode a very good race, but I had 2 flat tyres. I fell off one time. I broke my bicycle. At the end, I couldn't do anything else, so 3rd place is quite good. You hope that all the bad luck today would not follow you into Paris-Roubaix next week? Well, I don't know. With me, once it starts to be bad luck, it stays with me for a long time. You've got good condition at the moment. What do you think of Museeuw's performance today? It was a bit risky to go out almost 30 kilometers from the finish. Apart from the fact that he was very strong and put in a great performance, but once a breakaway goes clear in a race like this, a lot of riders want to get to the finish, but there are so many riders who don't actually want to work in the group. I was with 15 riders, and there were only 3 or 4 who really wanted to chase Museeuw. The others just wanted to stay with us, and I think once it's like that, a lot of riders don't want to work 100%. Everybody just thinks about themselves, and that's why the breakaway gets the advantage. They always have the advantage in a situation like that because psychologically it's stronger. But it was a good ride by Museeuw today, wasn't it? Maybe next week it'll be your chance. We'll see next week.
Johan, that was a great performance today, and that must be one that gives you an awful lot of pleasure.
Yes, because to win 3 times the Tour of Flanders is very difficult. So to win 1 time is already difficult, but this year I'm one of the favorites, and it's more difficult when you start in for us as favorite.
Does it help you to forget the bad luck from last year in the Tour of Flanders?
last year was a big year for me because I was a world champion. But I have a lot of troubles with this jersey. I crashed the Tour of Flanders, I crashed in Sanremo, and this year I win. So.
Did you think the attack on Berendries was an awful long way from the finish?
Maybe it's too long, but I was very strong.
And the chance to look back all the way down the street here at the finish in Meerbecker. It's a wonderful feeling. And winning today by just a few seconds, he made it the hard way, breaking away with the best part of 20 miles to race to the finish. Johan Museeuw gets his third win in the Tour of Flanders. Is this going to be the start of a great season for this man? On the podium today with Zanini on the left as we look at the picture, and André Schmil, and he will receive a magnificent trophy today as winner of this event. There's the final result. Museeuw winning ahead of Zanini and Schmil. Looking further down the list, Bartoli 6th, Ekimov coming home in 7th for US Postal, ever consistent Ballerini and Bortolami and Wilfred Peters also finishing in the top 10. Well, it looks as though Belgium really are on top form this year. May their good season continue. For Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.